Welcome to our weekly Church on the Rock podcast. For more information, visit us at churchak.org, download our Church on the Rock AK app, or like us on our Facebook page. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy our weekly podcast.
Happy Mother's Day. Yeah? Okay. Not so happy Mother's Day? Not sure what I'm supposed to say here. I called my mom this morning on my way in, which was probably too early to call your mom if she was in the same time zone, but they're down in Memphis right now, and so I just called to wish her Happy Mother's Day and then told her my sister, Noelle, who's down there as well, has her gift. So now I got to call Noelle and find out what she got her. I'll tell you what, I told my mom when I was talking to her on the phone this morning, I said, Mom, Mother's Day, not Easter, not Christmas, not the Christmas Eve service, not even weddings for that matter, or funerals. Mother's Day is the sermon that I am most tense about. And if you know me at all, I have a gift for offending people anyway, and the potential is so high on Mother's Day. And so, here we go. I'm just going to say I'm sorry right now, and then we're going to move on from there. I don't know if you know this, Mother's Day, more phone calls are made on Mother's Day than any other day in the year. In fact, the rest of the year combined, no, I'm just kidding, that part's not true, than any other day of the year, a 37% increase in phone calls on Mother's Day. That's right, because it's that one time of the year you think, I should call my mom and thank her for putting up with me. But it's a significant day, and I found in churches, it's a mixed bag. There are people, family of mine, friends of mine, who do not want to go to church on Mother's Day because of the pain associated with it, those kinds of things. And then there are people who can't wait to go because they might win the basket, and there's free chocolate. Or it's the one time a year I can placate my mom who's been begging me to go to church with her, and so you came today, and you're like, finally, I wore that one button-up shirt I have. And but it's a mixed bag. I don't know if you know this. In 1905, Anna Jarvis, when her mother passed away, she began petitioning for Mother's Day to be celebrated as a national holiday. Yeah, and so in 1908, the first Mother's Day celebration as we know it, Mother's Day celebration, happened. Guess where the first celebration happened? In a church. Because there was a value there. But then by 1914, Woodrow Wilson, who by the way was one of our presidents, if you don't know, Woodrow Wilson made it a federal holiday, and Mother's Day was forever entrenched in our calendar as something that we celebrate. And I would just say this. No matter where you find yourself today, here's what I want you to know as we move into these next few moments together, that this issue of the heart of a mother, the need for mothers, is about something much bigger than your own experience. It's about something much bigger than whether you're actually male or female. It's actually about the character and the nature of God. In fact, if you were to look in Genesis, in the very beginning, the creation of the world, the scriptures say, and God said, let us make humanity, mankind, in our image. In our image, let us create them. It's my mom. Let them create them male and female. That both the feminine and the masculine bear characteristics of the nature and character of God that are critical to our understanding of what God is like and our understanding of what we need in our world. So bear that in mind. There's a mom at Walmart recently. I'm not going to name her. Well, I will in a moment. There was a mom at Walmart recently, and she had that kid that was screaming the entire time. Anyone ever been there? Yeah, screaming the entire time, and you could hear her. You could hear her saying, calm down, Ellen. It's going to be all right, Ellen. It's almost time to go home, Ellen. As she made her way through the store and all the way up to the register, her child screaming the entire time, the lady at the register says to her, I just want you to know that you should be commended for your patience with little Ellen. And she looked at the lady at the register and said, darling, I'm Ellen. It's okay, Ellen. Calm down, Ellen. It's almost time to go home, Ellen. Don't kill anyone, Ellen. Man, I'll tell you, parenting can be a challenge. Which brings me to mocked and misunderstood. We're going to be looking at the story of a lady named Hannah and what would become her son, Samuel. It's found in 1 Samuel chapter 1. Here's how the story begins. 1 Samuel chapter 1, there was a man named Elkanah. Just turn to your mom and thank her for not naming you that, guys. Named Elkanah, who lived in Ramah in the region of Zuph in the hill country of Ephraim. Elkanah had two wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah did not. Each year, Elkanah would travel to Shiloh to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of heaven's armies at the tabernacle. The priests of the Lord at that time were two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas. On the days Elkanah presented his sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to Peninnah and each of her children. Catch it. Each of her children, multiple children. But since he loved Hannah, he would give her a choice portion because the Lord had given her no children. So Peninnah would taunt Hannah and make fun of her because the Lord had kept her from having children. How many of you want to punch Peninnah in the throat right now? Like, who? Why? Like, so cruel. And it's interesting, culturally speaking, in their day, you would have possibly mocked someone because they didn't have children. They would have thought maybe they're cursed by God, maybe they're out of favor with God. That's why she doesn't have any children. And Peninnah was making fun of her. In our day, people might make fun of you for having too many children. Like my wife, for example, grew up in a family of 11 kids, 9 girls. Let me say it again. 9 girls. 8? It felt like 9 girls. Sorry, whichever brother I just turned into a girl. Okay, I'm not going to tell you which one it is, but I know in my mind. And her dad, being extremely frugal and Dutch, decided that he knew how to manage things in the house with that many girls. And so in the bathroom at their house, the hairdryer, the curling iron, they were actually attached by cables to the wall. So they could not leave the bathroom, right? Like in the bathtub, he figured if he drew a Sharpie line around the bottom of the bathtub, and when you got in to take a shower, you plugged the drain, and once it got up to that line, you were done. You could use the water in the bottom to finish rinsing off if you'd like to. And then he put in a 10-gallon hot water tank. You got to learn to manage things when there's a lot of kids around. And so for Kitri and I, we really wanted to have a lot of kids, or at least I wanted to have a lot of kids. I assumed that she did. And then we had this challenge after our son Caleb was born. Because of all the things that had happened in that process, we were not able to get pregnant again. And if you've ever dealt with infertility, you know how painful that journey can be. In fact, people, I don't think intentionally, I certainly hope they aren't like Peninnah, right? But unintentionally it happens in social media platforms. In pastoral ministry, it would happen every time you'd hear someone talk about being pregnant and they're going to have a baby, or you were doing a baby dedication and you wanted to be happy for them, but at the same time you just felt like this poke and this prodding and this sense of loss. And I would just say this to you. If you find yourself in that place, you're in really, really good company. You're in the company of people like Abraham and Sarah, who couldn't have children, or Rebecca, or Rachel, or John the Baptizer's mother, Elizabeth. And here's what I want you to know. Your story's far from finished. Whether the Lord takes you into bringing your gifts, your calling, your passion, the way He's created you as a woman, He brings that into mentoring relationships or fostering relationships or adoption relationships, or miraculously you're able to have children. You are not finished. He has a purpose and a plan. And for all of the characters in the Scriptures, I think we spend far too little time fixating on the mothers in the stories. You think about mothers like the mother of Moses, who has this courage and faith to disregard, to blatantly disobey the government authorities who have said she has to kill her son, and she will put him in a basket and trust him to the Lord that the right things are going to happen, and she will send him off in faith. Or like Mary, the mother of our Messiah, like the mother of Jesus, who is willing to believe whatever the Lord tells her. And despite all the shame and the accusations and all of those things, she will move forward in faith to bring the Messiah into the world. The Scriptures are filled with extraordinary women. Now, I would just say this, that although Peninnah is cruel, what happens next with the husband, Elkanah, is either insensitive or just ignorant, or both. But I find often that men are insensitive because they're just ignorant. So listen to what happens. 1 Samuel 1, verse 7. Year after year it was the same. Peninnah would taunt Hannah as they went to the tabernacle each time. Hannah would be reduced to tears and would not eat. "Why are you crying, Hannah?" Elkanah would ask. "Why aren't you eating? Why be so downhearted just because you have no children?" He could have stopped there. She may have still killed him, but he could have just stopped there, but he doesn't. "You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons?" No. Why are you so downhearted? What's with this desire to have children? Aren't I better than 10 sons? No, you're not. You're more work than 10 sons, but you're not better than 10 sons. There's this longing, this desire in me to have children. I'm taunted constantly. And yet, it isn't being fulfilled. Which brings me to drunk with desperation. Some of you are like, hey, it's one of those permission sermons. It's not. We'll get there in a minute. 1 Samuel 1, verse 9. Once, after a sacrificial meal at Shiloh, where the tabernacle is, Hannah got up and went to pray. Eli, the priest, was sitting at his customary place beside the entrance of the tabernacle. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. And she made this vow: "O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime. And as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut." This is a specific vow, known as a Nazirite vow that she's making. As she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her. Seeing her lips moving, but hearing no sound, he thought she had to have been drinking. Because that's the logical assumption. She had to have been drinking. "Must you come here drunk?" he demanded. I mean, you talk about injury to insult. She's already grieving. She's already in anguish. She comes before the priest. The priest completely misunderstands her situation and condemns her for being an alcoholic. "Must you come here drunk?" he demanded. "Throw away your wine." "Oh, no, sir," she replied. "I haven't been drinking wine or anything stronger for that matter, but I am very discouraged, and I was pouring out my heart to the Lord." Maybe you've been there. Maybe it's over any number of issues. Maybe it's over loss of some sort. Maybe it's over a desire of your heart that you have that has not been fulfilled yet. Maybe it's a longing for healing or restoration of a relationship. I can tell you this, that over the years, Kitcher and I have been there, 14 years praying, 14 years of having people come and prophesy over us. This time next year, you will be pregnant. I'll tell you, as a husband, as a man, even as a pastor, there are so many times I wanted to go Old Testament on people. Like, a year's passed. You know what they do to false prophets in the scriptures. I brought my stones with me. Right? Like, I mean, literally, times, good friends of mine, people who have come up with all the best intentions, and they've had a word for Kitchery that's about infertility or about having children, and I've just stopped them in their tracks, and I said, first, I want to know, what do you already know about our situation? Because I don't want your word for us. If you got something from the Lord, great. If you don't, you better close your mouth right now. That feeling of like, oh, can you hear us? Having friends over to the house and just longing for something so much. Sitting with your wife on a couch and realizing she is grieving loss. Something's been robbed or taken, and asking the Lord for that thing. But there's an art to grieving well. Can I just give you 3 tips for grieving? 3 things that I think are really crucial in a place of grief. The first one is guard your grief. In the Jewish community, when someone passes away in that moment of loss and grief, the individual would sit in a room for 7 days. It's called sitting Shiva. And they would sit in the room for 7 days, and friends and family and others would come, and they would sit in the room as well, but nobody would say anything. It's a time of waiting. It's a time of processing. It's a time of hearing from the Lord. And in the world we live in, we're so prone to make everything so public so quickly, and sometimes it's really, really important to sit on it for a moment. Because the second piece, I think, is this. You and I, we have to guide our grief to the right place. You have to be selective, but I would say it's really important to direct it to the Lord. And here's what you need to know about God. He can handle it. Whatever it is. David in the Psalms, I have to explain this to my girls when we're reading the Psalms together. I'm like, these are songs, and David is expressing his heart to the Lord. He's expressing his frustration to the Lord. He's expressing his desire for vengeance to the Lord. He's describing all of these things to the Lord. And so when he's like, will you cut their tongues out, take their heads off, it's like, that's exactly how he's feeling. Here's what I want you to know. The Lord can handle it. In fact, he would invite it. He would want you to express your heart to him, and he would want you to be able to hear his heart for you. Guide your grief. Take it to the Lord. He can handle it. And the last one is give some grief. Give some of it away. You need people in your life who you can share that load with. Last summer, Wampa and I were doing the peak-to-peak hike in the Tetons, 2 11,000-foot plus peaks in 2 days, and there were pastors from all over the country who were part of this group, and they had given us a training regiment. It's about a 12-month training regiment, and some of these pastors had started that 12-month training regiment 12 days before they showed up, and they were from places like New York City, right? And so they had a JanSport backpack, and they were not prepared for this event. They thought they were prepared, and then they discovered they were not prepared. And so the first day into that first hike, there's some guys who are really, really struggling. And so Dave Burns, if you know Dave, he's currently on his way right now to climb Denali for like the 800th time, and he's 95 years old or something. I mean, it's just like he's a machine when you get out in the mountains. And then Wampa's there, and I'm there, and what we realize is we need to help. We want these guys to make it. We want them to make it to the top. We want them to make it to the top both days, so how can we assist? And the first thought is just take your backpack from them. Right? Put it on backwards, wear it on the front, wear yours on the back, or we could take everything out of their backpacks and then they could just carry an empty backpack. But what we realized is they actually need to carry something. They want to carry something. We can't take all of it. And so what we decided to do is if we would just spread it out between the three of us and they carry some of it, they could make it. When it comes to grief, it's a really important process to let some people carry it with you, to not carry it alone. So she expresses her heart to the Lord. She gets accused by Eli, and then she tells Eli what's going on. And this is what he says, 1 Samuel 1:17. Eli said, "Go in peace. May God grant the request you have asked of him." Then they returned home to Ramah. When Elkanah slept with Hannah, the Lord remembered her plea, and in due time she gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, "I asked the Lord for him," or "the Lord has heard and answered. The Lord has granted my request," because names have meaning. Just pause here for a moment. Enjoy this moment, because this is the moment that she's discovered that she's pregnant, and then she has the baby. Those are serene moments. They're peaceful moments. It's important to enjoy those moments. You know why? Because parenting is hard. Like, those moments don't actually last forever. I'll just give you an example. This is several years ago. My wife was at Safeway with our girls, and as they were headed down the aisle, a man passed by who had an eye patch on. So one of the girls yelled out, "Look! A pirate!" Because, of course, that's how we trained them. And not in the quiet voice, right? Like, not in your inside voice, not even in your outside voice, like in your outside moose call voice. Like, "Look, a pirate!" Shh, no. The rest of the time in the store, when the pirate was out of view, they were calling, "Pirate! Hello, pirate! Where are you, pirate?" Like, really? You are like having 10 sons, girl. Can I give a little parenting advice? Skip the fads in parenting. We live in a world filled with parenting fads. And trust me, if you've been around long enough, you know that they will come and they will go. But the thing is, and I'm a child of the 80s, so I know something about fads. Like, I had parachute pants, and I tight rolled my ankles, and I had feathered hair. Thank you, George Michael and Michael W. Smith. I had all the Bugle Boys. It was hammer time. I had the suspenders that you never wore up. You let them hang down beside your parachute pants. Anybody? Really? Were you all Alaskans? Okay, thank you. I see that hand. No, I wore flannel my whole life. Listen, seriously, I thought I was the coolest thing in the world. I told you this before. My cousin and I riding our bicycles at 14 years old to the gas station in Nashville. And there we are at the gas station as we ride our bikes up, all super cool with my suspenders hanging down. These girls pull up in a car. I'm like, "Arr." So I want them to know that I don't have to ride this bike. So I just hop off and I throw my bike down like I just don't care. And as I take a step forward, I realize the suspender wrapped around the seat of the bicycle. And now, as they're getting out of their car, I'm pulling the bicycle over top of my back as I'm walking forward and fall flat on my face. I'm like, "What's up, ladies?" Listen, I know something about fads. And here's the thing, fads, I'm so glad some of them went. But they come and they go. And what you and I actually need is we need something that is timeless. Here's how I would say it. Don't let the world's wisdom drown out God's word when it comes to raising his children. Did you hear that last piece? They're not actually yours or mine. They're actually his. And there are some days you're like, "I'm so glad they're his." And there are other days. But this sense of ownership, because the day will come when you and I are gone and they are carrying on. And what you need to fundamentally understand is that they are people on loan from God. We are stewards of them, but ultimately they belong to him. So don't let the world's wisdom drown out God's word when it comes to raising his kids, because those fads will come and go. In fact, the current fads actually contradict much of biblical wisdom. And I would just say skip the fads. We live in a world that prioritizes the wrong things in parenting. We're told that we're supposed to value being our kids' best friend over laying biblical foundations for them. And if you take the best friend parenting approach, then you will hesitate to lay any foundations with solid conviction. But you and I are actually called to be involved in the formation of children. We're told that in our world that we're to let them submit to their impulses, whatever their impulses are, versus trusting instruction for the future. But without instruction, you wouldn't know which impulses to say yes to and which ones to say no to. Often when people give me the argument that someone is just born that way, I don't even debate that argument because it might be true. I'm born with all kinds of desires that are not healthy for me nor society. And I need someone to tell me that I'm not called to live chasing my impulses. I'm actually invited into the instruction and the wisdom of the Lord. We're told that you should just value whatever you feel in reference to your sexual orientation versus God's given identity for you. We live in a world that's all mixed up, and it's a fad, and it will come and it will go, and it will never produce what it promises, and eventually we'll discover, oh, he did know. Get on that train now and get off of the fad train. But remember, that you and I ultimately don't get to choose our children's future. They do. When all's said and done, they're actually responsible for their choices, for their future. And the reality is that you and I have to be really careful not to confuse God's work in our kids' lives as our success. Because if you believe that that's the case, then also on the other end, you will tend to view your children's failures as entirely your fault. And when all is said and done, our children have to make decisions and choices of their own. My son got married last summer. Yes, that's when it was. I did the wedding. Got married last summer, and maybe because I'm a pastor, but people really wondered, like, so what do you think about this union with Caleb and Mackenzie? And I'm like, what do you mean? What do I think about this? Like, my son loves Jesus. She loves Jesus, as best I can tell, and they love each other, and they're getting married. When? I don't know what you're asking. Like, do they have missions hearts? Do they both, believe all the same doctrines? I'm like, hey, I'm super stoked that we're where we're at, right? And also, I just want you to know, I have been holding this since February 20th, and I got permission as of 35 minutes ago that I can publicly tell you that we're about to be grandparents for the first time. Oh, man. Yeah. I am so excited for the lessons they're going to learn. No, I'm just kidding. Man, I text them. You just got to know. I have to get up here. I got this in my head. I have ADHD. It is a miracle it hasn't come out sooner. But I was so proud of me for not spilling the beans. I texted them last night. I said, listen, I haven't told a single person. But when can we tell? I haven't told a single person. And then I said, I've told several married people, but not a single person. I haven't told any. Anyways, you and I can't take credit, ultimately. They have to make their own decisions, but we also aren't fully responsible for their failures either. They have to develop this relationship with Christ. My job is to point them in a direction, which brings me to dedication and destiny. 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 21. The next year, Elkanah and his family went on their annual trip to offer a sacrifice to the Lord, but Hannah did not go. She told her husband, wait until the boy is weaned, then I will take him to the tabernacle and leave him there with the Lord permanently. Notice she doesn't say leave him there with Eli. She's made a commitment to the Lord in reference to this child. Now listen to this. Her husband says, whatever you think is best, Elkanah agreed. Stay here for now, and may the Lord help you keep your promise. Here's what you need to know. The term weaned, it was used for a child that was somewhere between 3 and 5 years old, culturally speaking, at the time. Listen, Eli did not want an infant at the tabernacle, right? But she's going to raise this child to somewhere around 3 to 5 years old, and then she is going to take him to the tabernacle, and he's going to be dedicated to the Lord there, and he's going to remain there. Think about that for a moment. Your child, that infant, the one you were raising at some point, your child at 5 years old, after you've made the investment, you've put in the time, you've changed the diapers, you've done all of this work. In fact, they say by 6 years old, the imprinting and development of a child's character, much of that has taken place by that point. You've made all the investment. And probably at 2 years old, you wanted to take him over there, but now at 5 years old, you're thinking to yourself, this is hard. This is hard to turn him over to whatever the Lord has for him. And this is why her husband, Elkanah, is saying, I am praying for you, honey, that the Lord would give you the strength to keep the commitment that you made. Surrender is essential in parenting, and surrender actually requires trust. Trust that the Lord is going to do good. He's going to do right. There have been so many times along the way in this parenting journey that I've realized I missed it somewhere. Like I started thinking I was God in my kid's life. I started thinking I was the one to correct everything in my children's life. And at some point I had to surrender, and I have to do it over and over again to trust that the Lord is at work, that He is defending. But faithfulness is critical in the journey. I asked my wife's advice about what mamas in the room needed to hear. In fact, my mama, yesterday, she sent me a text. I ended up at the doctor's office this past week. I wasn't feeling super well, and she's like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? She says, I have an idea. This is yesterday. I have an idea. Noel's pastor down in Louisiana, my sister, Noel's pastor, his wife is preaching for Mother's Day. You should have Kitri preach tomorrow. It's like, tomorrow. I don't think she would be remotely excited about that, Mom. Nope. She's serious. She texts back, she says, you don't know. She might have a message burning in her heart that she just wants to get up and share. I said, Kitri, do you have a message burning in your heart that you just want to get up and share? So I texted my mom back. I said, you're not getting anything for Christmas this year, Kitri said. But here's what Kitri did tell me. She said, if I could share one thing with moms, it would be this. Galatians chapter 6, verse 10. And let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due time we will reap a harvest. Mamas need to know, and it's been a particularly hard season, but don't give up. Don't grow weary in doing good, because in due time, you will reap a harvest. Faithfulness, dedication is so central to mothering. It's so needed. In fact, faithfulness takes on many forms. It takes on the form of obedience. It takes on the form of surrender, but sometimes faithfulness just takes on the form of repentance. Because I don't know if you figured this out yet, but there are no perfect parents in this room or any other room for that matter. And at some point, we all find ourselves in the position where what faithfulness means in this moment is just to apologize, to repent to my children. In fact, there was only ever one perfect parent, and you know what happened to those kids. Adam and Eve, like the world we live in, like perfect love, perfect faithfulness, perfect truth, all of that, and yet we find ourselves in the world that we're in because at the end of the day, we all have to take responsibility. 1 Samuel 1:24, when the child was weaned, Hannah took him to the tabernacle in Shiloh. They brought the boy to Eli, and she says, Sir, do you remember me, the woman you accused of being drunk? Sir, do you remember me, Hannah asked. I am the woman who stood here several years ago praying to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he has granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life. And they worshiped the Lord there. Can I tell you, whether you're Hannah or Elkanah or anyone else, this moment, that moment when you say, this belongs to the Lord. What God has given me, I am giving back to the Lord, and I will play whatever role you see fit in this situation. It's actually critical for all of us. But I would say this, dedication may set direction, but it doesn't determine destiny. Dedication may set the direction. I think it's really important to set the direction. I think it's important to be public about setting the direction, but when all is said and done, dedication doesn't determine destiny. Each individual has to make those decisions for themselves.
Thank you for listening. For more of our podcasts and to discover how you can connect, visit us at churchak.org or download our Church on the Rock AK app from either iTunes or Google Play.